Section 25, How HUD Regulates Today's Fair Housing Rules and Regulations, 2026 Standard. Introduction, When Enforcement Becomes Reality. As we move forward from Section 23, where we explored disclosure laws and legal hotline scenarios, we now shift into the final piece of the puzzle, how fair housing laws are actually enforced in the real world. This section ties everything together. You've learned what the law says, how violations occur, and how to avoid them. Now we answer the question every professional must understand in 2026. What happens when someone files a complaint? And how does HUD regulate the process? Because at this level, compliance is not just about knowing the rules, it's about understanding the system that enforces them. HUD, the agency behind fair housing enforcement. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, was created by Congress in 1965 to address one of the most fundamental human needs, housing. HUD's mission is to create strong, sustainable, and inclusive communities while ensuring access to quality and affordable housing for all. HUD plays a central role in enforcing fair housing laws, particularly the Fair Housing Act of 1968 and the Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988. These laws prohibit discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, and familial status. The 1988 amendments significantly strengthened HUD's authority, allowing it to bring enforcement actions and increasing the consequences for violations. This ties directly back to Section 19. HUD is the agency that turns violations into real consequences. The complaint process, how it begins. Let's walk through a real-world scenario. A buyer believes they were denied housing due to discrimination. What happens next? The individual can file a complaint with HUD through phone, mail, or online submission. Once received, a HUD representative conducts an initial interview to determine whether the complaint falls within HUD's jurisdiction. If it does, HUD prepares a formal complaint for the individual to review and sign. At this point, the process becomes official, and the respondent, the person or entity accused of discrimination, is notified. The investigation. Digging into the facts. Once the complaint is filed, HUD begins a formal investigation. This may include interviewing the complainant and respondent, speaking with witnesses, reviewing contracts, emails, and documents, analyzing advertising and communication. This is where everything we've discussed in earlier sections comes into play. Advertising, emails, text messages, and policies all become evidence. 2026. Insight. Nothing disappears. Everything can be reviewed. Conciliation, the opportunity to resolve. Before making a final determination, HUD offers both parties the opportunity to resolve the issue through conciliation. This is a voluntary settlement process similar to mediation, where both sides attempt to reach an agreement without going to court. If conciliation is successful, the case is closed. However, if it fails, the process continues. This ties back to risk management. Many cases can be resolved early if handled properly. Determination, reasonable cause or no cause. After completing the investigation, HUD makes a determination. If HUD finds no reasonable cause, the case is dismissed. However, the complainant still has the right to file a lawsuit in federal court. If HUD finds reasonable cause, it means there is sufficient evidence to believe discrimination occurred or is about to occur. At this point, the case moves forward to enforcement, the legal path, administrative hearing, or federal court. When reasonable cause is found, both parties must choose how the case will proceed. They can choose an administrative hearing before a HUD administrative law judge, ALJ, or a lawsuit in federal district court. If the case goes to an administrative hearing, a HUD attorney represents the complainant. If it goes to federal court, the U.S. Department of Justice may prosecute the case on behalf of the complainant. This is where enforcement becomes serious and public. Penalties and consequences. What's at stake? If a violation is proven, the consequences can be significant. These may include monetary damages to the victim, civil penalties, required changes to policies and practices, payment of attorney fees, injunctive relief, forcing compliance. This ties directly back to Section 19. Violations are not just theoretical, they carry real financial and professional consequences. HUD's role beyond enforcement, affordable housing programs. HUD's role is not limited to enforcement. It also works to expand access to housing through programs designed to assist low-income families. One of the most well-known programs is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, Section 8, which helps families afford housing by providing rental subsidies. Under this program, tenants pay a portion of the rent, while the remainder is paid directly to the landlord by a local housing authority. HUD also administers grant programs that support housing development and affordability, including Home Investment Partnerships Program, Self-Help Homeownership Opportunity Program, SHOP, National Housing Trust Fund. These programs provide funding for construction, renovation, and rental assistance, helping expand access to housing across the country. The pattern: how HUD connects everything. At this point, you should see how HUD fits into everything we've covered. Section 3 identifies discrimination. Section 7 guides daily practice. Section 15 and 16 regulates advertising. Section 19 defines violations. Section 25 enforces the law. HUD is the bridge between the law and real-world consequences. Bringing it all together, the 2026 compliance mindset. In today's real estate environment, understanding how HUD regulates is just as important as understanding the law itself. As a professional, your responsibility is to prevent violations before they happen, recognize when a situation could escalate, document your actions carefully, respond appropriately if a complaint arises. Because once a complaint is filed, the process is no longer informal. It becomes structured, documented, and enforceable. The takeaway is simple. Fair housing compliance is not just about avoiding mistakes, it's about understanding the system that holds you accountable. Online discussion. Question 1. What is HUD's primary role in fair housing? Answer: to enforce fair housing laws and investigate discrimination complaints. Question 2. What is conciliation in the HUD process? Answer: a voluntary settlement process where both parties attempt to resolve the dispute without going to court. Question 3. What happens if HUD finds reasonable cause? Answer: the case proceeds to an administrative hearing or federal court for enforcement.